Good morning, everyone. My name is Shelley Heddleman. I'm chair of the Public Safety, Transportation, and Environment Subcommittee, and here with my colleagues, Senator Rosapup and Senator Lewis Young. And we want to welcome the Secretary of the Department of Transportation, the Executive Director of the Maryland Department of Transportation Authority, and the chief engineer. So we look forward to hearing from each of you today about the status of the repair or rebuild of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. So I am going to just turn it over and welcome Secretary Catherine Thompson. We really appreciate your being here today, and I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair Heddleman. For the record, I am Katie Thompson, Secretary of Transportation. I'm joined today by my colleagues Bruce Gardner, the Executive Director of the Maryland Transportation Authority, and Jim Harkness, who hopefully has been able to join, who is the Chief Engineer at MDTA. I think, as we all know, the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge was an unimaginable tragedy for the state of Maryland and the Baltimore region. In the weeks and months since the March 26, 2024 accident, our team has worked tirelessly and expediently to deliver the fastest infrastructure project in the nation. Working together with the Progressive Design Build contractor, we've progressed design past the 70% milestone and continue to advance critical path construction activities through what we call the early works packages. Bruce and Jim will provide additional information about those activities and walk you through a PowerPoint shortly. As you are aware, in April, we announced the off-ramping of Kiewit from the project. I want to be crystal clear that Kiewit has not been fired and work will not stop on the phase one work, which includes the early work. They will be on site, continuing work through the end of the year until they complete the work that they are contractually obligated to complete. The off-ramping of Kiewit came after several weeks of negotiating in good faith on the next phase of the project, which is the reconstruction of the bridge. We were negotiating on price and schedule. We exchanged multiple sets of documents, data, and information, had multiple meetings to go through the information that was provided and pressure test the assumptions, both theirs and ours. At the end of the day, we were unable to close a very significant gap in the price that they were estimating as it compared to the estimates that we had. And our estimates were based on multiple independent experts who have provided us with estimates of the full cost of the demolition and reconstruction of the bridge. And those costs remain consistent within the range that we put out last November, towards the higher end, but still in the $5 million range. This decision was not taken lightly. And I want to assure the committee that the work will not stop on this project. Our team is working diligently to ensure that there's continuity of work as we transition from Kiewit to the new contractors that will be selected under the procurements that Bruce and Jim will talk you through. And the work remains on track to deliver this project as quickly, as cost effectively, and meeting the current safety standards as we can. As I said, Kiewit will continue to deliver the rest of the phase of the work as we advance the new procurements for construction. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Bruce Gardner and Jim Harkness to go into more detail about the off-ramping process, the timeline, future procurement methods, and then we welcome your questions and look forward to the discussion.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Gardner.
Yes, thank you. For the record, Bruce Gardner, Executive Director of the Maryland Transportation Authority. What we have displayed on the screen for you today is we have about 8 slides that we wanted to go through with the committee to talk through some of the topics that the Secretary mentioned, that being the work taking place now and the rest of this year, the procurements, and a bit of a spending update, particularly considering the settlement dollars that are coming into the MDTA within the next week. So as far as project status, we are in that shifting period now from off-ramping Kiewit, working with them on the phase one early works packages, and then going towards these 4 new procurements. So Jim Harkness will go through those in more detail in a couple slides, but we do own all the work that has been completed on the design to date with Kiewit. That money has been put towards the project and will continue to support the project. So what we have done is shifted now to the new procurements, and on May 19th we had a very well attended 850 attendees, an industry forum. And last Friday, we posted responses to a number of questions that were asked during that forum and leading up to the forum. That's all leading up to the procurement timelines that we'll go into detail in a bit. And then on the next slide, you see a bit about the early works that we are doing. So at a high level, it's the critical path construction, that pile driving that is going on. The bottom right of the screen shows a schematic of the trestle, the work platform that's going into the river right now, and then ordering the production piles for those 2 main foundation work. So that will be the vessel protection and the foundation work for the new main span pylons. So I'll turn it over to Jim to go into a little bit more detail, where you can see on the next slide the different work packages that Kiewit is performing under.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Jim Harkness, Chief Engineer for Maryland Transportation Authority. And this slide tries to lay out the various early work packages that we've negotiated and entered into with our current contractor, Kiewit. And so starting with the first one, that was the demolition of the portions of the former bridge that were on land. So you can see a year ago, we started that work, and then they actually completed that work at the end of January, early February of this year. So this slide kind of lays that schedule out for you, working left to right, and essentially it shows you that we've spent funds procuring long lead items, getting those fabricated, and then ultimately turning that into an installation for both the pile and the trestle that Bruce talked about. And then you can see from these timelines, those activities continue to at least the end of this year for those current early work packages. And so the MDTA board approved a funding request for a total so far of $495 million for those early work packages. Bruce, you want to?
So I wanted to touch base on this slide related to the expenditures to date. So we at the MDTA board level, they've authorized more than $700 million for that construction of the Key Bridge. So that was $214 million for the phase 1 work related to different design activities. Jim just went over the early work packages. But as of the middle of last month, we had spent approximately $457 million. That includes some of the early quick release funding for the initial salvage and debris removal efforts. The rest of that money has been the insurance proceeds. So we are just about this month, we will be depleting our insurance proceeds, and we had $350 million from that policy. Plus, we earned another $19 million in interest during the time period. Also had some minor recycling revenues towards federal aid eligible cost, but that is you're quickly moving into the emergency relief fund. So we have $217 million that is already $217 million that's already been authorized in those emergency relief funds that were approved last September. So I anticipate starting to draw down those funds, and we'll eventually, working with Federal Highways very closely on how the settlement proceeds will come into. So almost $2.1 billion in, initially in those settlement proceeds that will grow with interest over time to support the project. That all has to be spent in accordance with federal guidelines. So working very closely with Federal Highways, as I said, on the exact nature of how those funds get spent. Just like with the insurance proceeds, we need to make sure we're in compliance with all federal rules and regulations. And we also are continuing to submit those detailed damage inspection reports to continue to request federal funding, because right now the settlement proceeds will not cover the full cost of the bridge. So we do have a request in for $300 million that Federal Highways has supported, but waiting for final action on that to have that appropriated to us and obligated towards the project. So that's a bit on how the finances have worked to date, and we are in the process of, as I said, receiving those settlement proceeds and expect those to be in our accounts next week.
I just have a question, sorry, before you move on, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Would you rather we hold questions to the end?
It's your committee, Chair. So
Yeah, I
whichever way.
know, but I don't want to interrupt your flow.
We're good.
So with regard to the spending, do you, and obviously costs change, I understand that. But at the moment, here we are, June 4th of 2026, it looks like, if I heard you correctly, that you're looking for an additional $300 million from the feds to complete this project. Is that correct?
So we are, every 6 months, we submit these reports on our projected spending to keep, applying to that federal program during the entire construction process. So we will continue to do that throughout the project in accordance with the emergency relief program requirements.
So you reevaluate and reassess the costs at every 6-month stage?
It's more related to cash flow.
Okay.
So it's just, we have our estimates. We could talk a bit about those later, probably. Yeah, kind of go through. Might be good to go through the procurements first, but that is just a cash flow analysis to see what we need.
Okay. All right. Keep going.
All right. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. So we'll talk about the path forward now with the new procurements. We're going to break this project into 4 contracts. And so on the top portion of your screen, you'll see our first contract. It is the demolition, and there's some miscellaneous marine work that we're packaging together. This is to remove the still remaining portions of the former bridge, essentially the pieces of the former bridge that are over water or in water. And so that work will be pretty straightforward, and we're able to advance that pretty quickly. And so that will be our first course of business under the new procurement approach. On the bottom portion of this screen, you'll see sort of an elevation view of the new bridge. And then we've broken it up into 3 separate packages here. So on the left side, we have the Southland approach, which is going to be portions of the bridge approach that are on land. Similarly, on the right side, we have the Northland approach. So we have those 2 are separate procurement packages. And then we have in blue and in the middle, the main span cable stayed bridge, as well as the portions of the marine approaches. So other portions of the bridge that are in water. And then I would note that the required vessel protection associated with this project is included in the scope of the main span and marine approaches. Okay, next. So now we have some details here about each of those 4 contracts. On the left, the demolition and miscellaneous marine work, that will be a typical design bid build low bid package with where we have qualifications for the contractors, but we're accepting low bid. We have a cost range of 50 to 100 million. We hope to get this invitation for bids advertised this summer, and we would look for a construction notice to proceed to start construction in fall of this year. Then we can move over to the marine and main span and marine approaches. That's going to be a different approach. This will be a 2-step competitive seal proposal or design build. That anticipated cost range, this is the significant portion of the project, so it's $3.5 to $4 billion. We would have a request for qualifications advertised this summer. We would then evaluate those submissions, and we would then create a short list of qualified proposers. Those qualified proposers would receive from us a request for proposals, and then they would submit those, and we would hope to have a project NTP next summer for that contract. On the right side, we have the Southland approach and Northland approach contracts. They're similar to the demolition in that they're going to be the design bid build, low bid. They have different cost ranges because the Southland approach is slightly longer than the Northland approach. So there's a different amount of bridge that is being constructed on the Southland approach. Because of that, we are advertising that one first. So this fall, we look to advertise that Southland approach, and we staggered that, and then we would follow it with the Northland approach in the winter, this coming winter, with the idea that we would have a notice to proceed to start construction in spring for the Southland and then late spring for the Northland approaches. Then, Bruce, we're going to pick back up.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Unless there are any questions on those phasing of the procurement, Madam Chair, happy to pause for those.
Anybody have any questions on the procurement details?
Hi, this is Jim Rosenfeld. Can you
Go
hear me?
ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I had trouble getting in. And so I literally just got in about 5 minutes ago. And I just wanted to, this is really just to catch me up, and I apologize for this. So the four contracts that you're talking about are after what? What has been contracted for? What has been completed, if anything? Or is this literally the beginning of the project at demolition and miscellaneous marine work?
Pilar, if you could go back a few slides for the early works packages.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's all. I'm just trying to get my head around this.
Yeah, so what Kiewit has done, in addition to all the design work that they've done, over 70% and close to 100% actually on those approach spans that Jim talked about. But we are getting 100% design for everything except for the vessel protection in June. So the initial demo work that has been done, the pile production, these are piles that'll be part of the new bridge. So we are actually, have started the project. We'll be acquiring more of those large 200-foot, 8-foot diameter piles that are going into the river, and also doing work to prepare for construction. So this is all work that continues through this year.
Okay, so this slide basically says it's what's already contracted for and in the works.
Correct.
Gotcha. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, so go back to the procurement slide if anyone else has anything.
Sorry, just to follow up on what Senator Rosepup just asked, all of that is under the Kiewit contract, is that correct? And will be
Correct.
performed by them, all of that early work?
Right.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so what we are doing is, as you may recall, during the October 2025 time period with USDOT's interim final rule that basically requires us to do, the states to do a revaluation of our DBE programs. Right now, we're still going through that process. DOSM has not completed that yet, but once that process is complete and there's a recertification and we have new goals, we'd be able to set them, but we're not sure if it'll be done in time. So prior to each of these procurements that Jim talked about, we will be determining our ability to set DBE goals on the project. But that doesn't mean we aren't going to be striving to make sure that we're utilizing Maryland small and local contracting community in the project. There are outreach requirements as part of the project, and we are also, as you can see at the bottom of the page, looking to see what we can do in terms of a workforce development on this the project and these 4 contracts. So we are doing reevaluation of the PLA status per the governor's executive order, and we'll for each one of these contracts, now that we've split them out into 4 different contracts. So that's work to be done, and we can also talk about some other next steps that we need to be doing as far as the work here. On the next slide. Jim, you want to go ahead and just talk about some of the design activities?
Yeah. So as we've kind of talked about here, the contractor Kiewit, still under phase one contract with us, will continue to just finish up that design work as well as the early work packages that they've had assigned to them. Again, that trestle construction, the pile driving for the foundations of the main piers for the new bridge. Additionally, we're just going to continue the ongoing engagement that we've had with USDOT and Federal Highway in particular, related to these 4 new procurements, making sure that we're able to advance those as quickly as we have laid out here. Things have been excellent so far, and we anticipate that we'll have continued cooperation as we move forward. We're going to work internally to continue developing those new procurement documents. We're taking documents that were kind of arranged for a design build situation and converting those into our invitation for bids. So essentially making them into a format for accepting those bid packages from the contractors that are interested in proposing on those related contracts. And then finally, as a follow-up to the virtual industry forum that we had on May 19th, we are holding an in-person industry forum on June 18th. However, this will be different. That May 19th industry forum, the intended target was everyone. We wanted to get all the information that we could out quickly to garner interest and to allow teams to start planning forward on how they would pursue these contracts. Now, the in-person industry forum is to really get into the most difficult of the new contracts, the main span contract. We need a focus on those specific complex bridge contractors as well as marine contractors and other specialty contractors. So we're really focused on meeting with those firms and answering questions that are very specific to that one contract. It's not intended to kind of broadly address all 4 contracts. So that, again, was on June 18th, and we have open registration for that. And so we are starting to receive those requests to attend that right now.
That concludes the remarks that we had and the slides we had to present, but we're all available, obviously, for any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee?
Again, this may have been covered before I got on, but when we talked about the financing of it, I mean, you have the cost numbers, but like, where's the money coming from?
Sure, I can restate that. So we still have that 100% federal guarantee that was provided by Congress. So we're very thankful for that. But as you saw in the paper last couple of weeks, with the settlement funds from the owners and operators of the Dolly that the Attorney General was able to secure for us, that about $2.1 billion will be deposited in MDTA accounts, a separate account, as soon as Monday. So we're hoping to have that in place, and we're working with Federal Highways on exactly how we spend those monies down. As you may recall, the insurance proceeds have been supporting us to date. So one of the slides that the committee you'll have available to you shows the expenditures to date on the project. We're just about to deplete those insurance proceeds and the quick release funding that we got back in the early stages of the project, and we are headed into a situation where we could likely be drawing both on the federal highway funds that have been allocated to us in the past year, $217 million, and those settlement funds. So we're just working on how we apply those funds to the project in the best way possible with Federal Highways. So we're finalizing some things with that in the next couple of weeks. But so basically, emergency release program funding now, settlement funding and the future federal appropriations. If there is advanced funding required before we get federal funds in hand, the MDTA would issue bonds on that and get reimbursed, and we have that built into our financial forecast, which we update twice a year.
I'm just going to follow up on that if I can. So you build out the calendar, I assume, to the project end, and you look at, right, you have this now 2.1 billion plus 217 cash on hand, right? And so take me through the calendar about what is the timing in an ideal world of your expenditures and your cash flow. When do you run out of money? And at one point, are you going back to Congress? Because obviously they're going to need time to say, okay, now we need you to step up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is every 6 months we will do an evaluation, both for the purposes of Congress and for our own financial forecast. So just like the department, we do a kind of a draft and a final 6-year financial forecast with the cash flow of this project. We're we've redone our assumptions now, from the progressive design build assumptions to this new contracting assumptions. So we just make those requests to Congress in light of what settlement funds, an example might be if the settlement funds were on one particular, set of procurements, then the federal funds we project for the other portions of the project as one way to do it. So it's an every 6-month assessment that we will do, and that federal appropriations, like I said, they get those in after our request on a timely basis. Everything works good, and we keep that flow going, and we don't have to advance fund that much. If they aren't able to get an appropriation in, then our advance funding ends up being drawn out a little bit more until we get the federal reimbursement.
But you're expecting the full 2.1 in the bank on Monday or thereabouts.
Correct.
Okay, and you said 6 years, but we anticipate that this is going to be finished before 6 years.
I was referring to our 6-year financial forecast. Sorry.
Okay. What is the date by which, if in an ideal world?
Yeah, absolutely.
Project.
I mean, that is absolutely the thing that we are most concerned about here in the Baltimore region. We commute through the tunnels and to our office building every day, and this reassessment of the contracting is making us look at that end of 2030 date. That's the date we have now. So as we move into the new procurements, we'll have to do an assessment of that schedule to see. We're trying to do as best as possible with this competitive environment with the contractors, but it's going to depend on what comes in from them.
And as you can imagine, many of my constituents are dealing with the effect on the Baltimore Beltway, which is quite dramatic.
Yes, sir. Certainly is.
Yeah. Any of my colleagues have questions? Senator Rosepep?
So on the timing, basically the earliest would be the end of 2030, but likely it would be later than the end of 2030. Is that the implication of what you're saying?
That's the implication of what I'm saying. Yes, sir.
Okay, that was question number one. The question number two is back to the money for a minute. So the visible risk for the financing right now is that for some reason the federal government doesn't come through with all the money it's committed to. Is that the way to think about it?
Yes.
And for that to happen would take act of Congress?
For it to change would take an act of Congress, but the default is the 90% level. But it's 100% in federal law right now.
Okay, so the risk would be going from 100 to 90.
Correct. Yeah.
What does that translate into dollars?
Dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's if it's a $5.2 billion project, that's the 10% of that, $520 million.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Secretary, did you want to add anything to that?
No.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about the 4 procurement packages that are next? Do you anticipate, and obviously you have no way of knowing, but are there of these potential bidders out there? Are there companies that, I'm trying to get a sense of, do you expect actually 4 different companies? You don't know right now? Are there
Right.
companies out there that could do the whole thing, could do each of the 4 pieces, 3 out of 4, whatever?
Yeah.
Can you talk a
So
little bit
I'll
about
take,
that?
sorry. I could take that initially. I thought I was muted, but so the reason to do this for is, as you said, to maximize competition. We've staggered these. You'll have more likely the local contracting firms that'll be on the approach bands and the demo, but it's possible that a firm could be on several of these projects the way it's structured, but that helps us maximize the competition for this. I'd also just like to point out one of the reasons that you wouldn't have seen this in the beginning. I think there's a couple obvious reasons, but I just want to point them out. We didn't have a consultant support on this. Now we have the GEC, a team helping on owner's rep side. We have the construction management contracts in place. So the MDTA's ability to manage this as a large project is much improved over where we were when we went into the progressive design build model. That progressive design build procurement had a bunch of advantages. I think you're seeing them in the fact that we have this design in place and we have the early works packages done. So we're set up as an agency to manage big projects. We've done the Nice Bridge, we've done the I-95, significant multi-billion-dollar projects there. And that's what we're headed to for, with this approach on the project.
But that consultant management team stays in place.
Correct.
throughout.
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy to have Jim add anything. As much of what I've learned about these things, I've learned from Jim and other engineers.
I think you've covered it, Bruce. Thanks.
All right.
Could you talk a little bit about the PLAs and how your approach there?
Yeah, sure. As you may recall, Kiewit had entered into a voluntary PLA on this project. So with the workforce required for this project, we need all hands on the project. But what we're going through for the procurements is that an evaluation to determine the appropriateness of the procurements for PLA. So that we'll look at things like the funding levels, the source of fundings, federal or our settlement funds, and working with the USDOT on, what their requirements are in that process. So a lot of work to do in the next several months.
And can you talk a little bit about whether you anticipate other liability in terms of and other legal issues that may arise that are out there?
Sure. Secretary, do you want to take that first, given your background versus mine?
Just thank you for that question. And the answer is the way we've approached the design for the procurement and estimating the cost and the timeline is to go through very rigorous risk assessments, pressure testing assumptions. Part of that work we've done with our 2 independent cost estimator firms that between the 2 of them have more than 500 years of experience in delivering projects. So that's one source of information that helps us build risk. We also partner very closely with Federal Highways. They have someone embedded with our team on the project team, but also with the division office and headquarters to do what they call cost schedule risk assessments. And they have now done the 3rd cost risk assessment, which was completed, I believe it was back in March, but Bruce and Jim can correct me if I'm wrong, to help us pressure test the assumptions, the costs, and the risks. So all of that is baked in. In terms of additional litigation, we understand that the Attorney General is considering additional litigation against one of the suppliers of components for the dolly. That shouldn't pose any additional risk to us, but might be an additional source of revenues if there's recovery. That litigation, if a suit is filed, will likely take many, many years to be resolved. So, we're not counting on that right now. But then finally, I would just add that we continue to look at emerging risks that may not be currently on our radar screen, but as the economy is very dynamic and the global environment is dynamic, we regularly go back and review our estimates and our assumptions about risk. But I'll turn it over to Bruce and Jim for more detail.
Yeah, I think you've covered everything I would have. I'd just say that, you know, as we go, the biggest procurement obviously out there is that design build portion that is for the marine portion, both vessel protection and the bridge over the Patapsco.
Senator Rosebud?
Yeah, on the cost side and risk side, where does the chaotic tariff policy of the United States fit into this?
So,
Thank
Jim-
you for that question. I can start and then kick it to Jim, but it does inject a lot of confusion and uncertainty, but the practical implications for us at this point of time have been minimal, and Jim can share more details about that.
Yes. So far, we have not had a significant impact from the result of tariffs. We've not direct to the project, at least. We've had the ability to identify sources that are BABA compliant for many of the pieces of the bridge project. So there are a very small number of things that we may have to go to for a waiver, but it's very minor at this point. We are reassessing with the new procurements to make sure that that's still the case. But so far we haven't hit a major concern with tariffs.
Could you go a little deeper? You used some jargon about BABA, which I'm not familiar with, and you talked
sorry.
waiver, and I'm not sure a waiver from what.
Just the Buy America, Build America. The requirements that we have on this project, because it is the federal funding. So we have to meet those requirements, and then the ability to source those locally or abroad is the issue with meeting that requirement, and then therefore does a tariff on some of those things come into play.
But in the risk, I mean, I'm not an expert on construction materials, but I mean, in the risk that the price of domestically produced and the price of foreign produced would go up, either because of tariffs themselves on the relevant products or because of the uncertainty about tariffs. Or am I missing something?
Right. I guess that is what we've looked at in terms of material costs has been what is the pattern and expected outcomes for material cost increases and or decreases. So that's part of what we have to take on that analysis when we're projecting these costs, right? Because it's over 4 years we're looking at these costs, and we like to lock them in up front if we can, and then we have actually worked with specifications to be able to provide us with the contractors with a little less risk in that area, and we kind of share in the risk of material cost changes by evaluating their pricing at the time of proposal or bid versus when they actually order the materials. And we can see a benefit if prices have changed and gone lower, and they would be also covered a little bit in terms of pricing if prices should increase from the time of the bid versus order. So we have some of those mechanisms that we've built into our contracts in order to try to deal with that risk. So it's all about trying to manage those future risks.
So the cost of materials could vary later in the project. That's what you're saying.
It can, and so in order to deal with that, we try to do our best to address that up front. They obviously have to estimate those things up front and try their best to understand what a future market condition may be, base their prices on that, how much risk they're willing to take, and that's sort of what comes out in the competitive process of looking for giving us the best value in terms of their schedule and their pricing.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could, I'll just add that, the team has done a great job in trying to project risk, but I think what the senator is and the vice chair is saying is that volatile situations make our job complicated. So anytime the oil price shocks, gas price shocks, anything changing with tariffs, just that up and down and constant monitoring just introduces a risk. So appreciate your concerned about that. We have that, and it's a big effort.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Do you have any concerns just, at this moment? Obviously it changes and it's very fluid, but with supply chain issues? Anything right now that is just like, we're having a really hard time getting X, Y, or Z?
Well, I mean, the teams had to adjust, right? So, suppliers, they, want to make sure they have a supply of steel coming in for those production piles. So they've had to adjust and say, wait, we should diversify a bit just to make sure that, we don't get caught behind something, make sure the prices are more competitive by, spreading out that production, purchase of production piles. So that's been a bit of the experience today. Jim, anything else that you would want to highlight?
No, I think part of the benefit again of sort of staggering these is that we're able to allow contractors to reach out to suppliers and sort of hold their place in line, if you will, and then that helps to kind of lock down or lessen that uncertainty about supply issues, as well as the diversification of suppliers that Bruce talked about.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. So what is so you said June is your in-person, right? June 19th? Is that right?
18th.
18th is your next, okay, in-person, okay. Any other big, well, when do you expect to award those contracts? That's on the time. That's on the
Yeah,
time.
that the NTP varies. So,
Right.
we have a construction for the NTP for the demo of fall 26.
Right.
The others range from late spring to summer of 27.
Okay. All right.
And again, our objective is to ensure that there is no stoppage of work, so that Kiewit will conclude its work. We'll have a contracting firm on board to do the additional demolition. We'll work on the land side approaches and the marine span. So again, what we're going to try to tightly rein in the timeline for final delivery, but ensure there's no work stoppage over the course of that period.
Okay, as you develop that timeline, that would be great if you could keep us in the loop on that.
We will.
Okay, same thing with the cash flow issues and, yep. Okay, any other questions from committee? Senator Lewis Young, Senator Rosepap? No.
No, I'm good. I think we've covered the key items, the timeline, the costs, and variables that could present contingencies. Those are the three biggest topics from my perspective.
And obviously, if you get, crazy things that happen, please keep us in the loop.
We will regularly keep you updated, and we will be especially mindful of notifying you if anything anything strange seems to be happening.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as a reminder, there are some joint chairman's reporting requirements that we'll be submitting in July, and then we have a later one too. So before we get back in front of you in session, you'll see a couple of those in more detail. So keep a lookout for those, and we'll be sure to follow up with Senator Sailing as our one of our two home senators here on each on one side of the bridge, and make sure we give him the opportunity to ask any questions about the slide deck.
Yes, I know he was sorry he couldn't join us this morning. Yeah, thank you. We really do appreciate your being here and keeping us in the loop. And I know we will see and hear from you before we go into the 2027 session.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
very
time.
much.
Thanks
Take
a lot.
care. Be well. Thanks. Bye-bye.